Ice nice with the ice so smooth. If you messin' me, you messin' with the goons. Pucks in deep 5-hole, then we selly. Hockey with the boys and we trip like Letter Kenny. With dollar bills, we got the loonies. Paul and Braydon, a couple beauties. Gloves coming off if you wanna tangle. Or I can hit you with the dirty dangles. Yeah, this is Dirty Dangles.
What's going on there, Dirty Danglers? Welcome back to another episode. What's going on there, Braydon?
Hey, Paul. It's going pretty good, man. It's been a little while, but it's nice to finally get another podcast. So it's been a busy few months for us, but yeah, it's nice to talk some hockey again, especially at this time of the year being the trade deadline.
Absolutely. You know what? A lot's happened, right? And we're going to get into a bunch of trades that just happened, one of which includes Vancouver. And but what have you been up to?
Oh, you know, it's just been steady going for me right now. Just been working and, you know, just kind of living the Kelowna life. It's been good so far. I've been really enjoying it. How's things going for you?
Yeah, I don't think things haven't been better. You know what? Just grind away with school, which is why it's been a bit since we've had a podcast. But I'll tell you what, Dirty Danglers, we're going to bring you a whole lot of content, and that's starting today. First up, we got the Vancouver Canucks that just dropped another trade.
Yeah, Tyler Toffoli from the LA Kings, right winger and left winger, coming to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for Tim Schaller, prospect Tyler Madden, and a second-round pick, plus a conditional fourth-round pick in 2022 if he resigns with Vancouver. So what are your thoughts on this trade right now, Paul?
All right, well, we're going to break down the trade with this, and this is going to be a theme for the episode. This is a rental player. That means he has 1 year left on his contract, and that's this year. So it's an expiring contract that you give up a second, a top prospect, and an NHL forward for. So let's first break down the second-round pick. Do you think that would be enough for Toffoli?
Probably not just a second-round pick. They were probably looking for a prospect because LA is a rebuilding team. So they were looking to add some youth to grow it because obviously that team is really aging with like the likes of Jeff Carter and even Andre Kopitar is getting up there in age. So they're obviously looking to, just add some more youth. So obviously they were looking for a prospect. Tyler Madden's been in the system for Vancouver for a little while now. And he's been playing really well. However, this might be a little bit of a factor in this, that he did break his finger this past weekend playing with his team in Boston. So that could have been a factor in this as well.
Yeah, probably that's a huge factor. Because we actually had Tyler Madden, pretty high in our system. I mean, we picked him in the third round in, I think, 2018.
Yeah, and that was actually, this small tidbit, that was actually from Columbus when John Tortorella went to Columbus.
That was actually Jonah Gadjevich.
Oh, right. No, sorry,
but
that's right.
This is a player that we really liked, and it was very much a steal. And he played a pivotal role in, I think, the 2019 World Juniors for the Team USA.
Yeah.
Like, he was one of their best players.
Absolutely. He was one of the top centermen. He was playing, the second-line center for them or something like that? Yeah, he was playing really well.
Yeah, and he actually has more points this year with Northeastern, his university team that he's playing for. They actually even won the Beanpot. Mind you, it was a little bit controversial penalty apparently in it. But needless to say, the thought process on him was, yeah, this is a great prospect. But this is also a prospect that the Canucks quit on because, you don't just trade a prospect that you think's a surefire NHL player, and he is a right shot centerman, right, that would probably be able to play the wing on the right wing, would probably be able to play center, but they just thought that maybe my look into this is they think he's too much of a perimeter player, and that he's not big enough to kind of fit into that third-line role that they envision for him.
Right, but that position right now was already filled with Gaudette, right? So I don't know if they really had, as of right now, that fit, because I kind of want to get into it. Just I don't even know what's going through the minds of the management that's going in Vancouver right now, because they keep accumulating all these players that have big contracts that they will eventually end up re-signing, right? So it's scaring me in the grand scheme of things, because in the long run, you still have to sign Pettersson. You got to re-sign Hughes. You got to re-sign all these guys that they're going to want big money. Like Pettersson's going to at least want $12 million. He was probably 9 to 10 million. So these contracts are going to add up. So if you keep re-signing these guys with term and big money, it's going to affect the long run. I'm going to be really disappointed if we end up with only like a 3-year contract like these last RFAs this past year got because of these kind of moves. Because I know for a fact, well, not for a fact, but I have a really big hunch that with this trade, they will really try to re-sign Tyler Toffoli. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, he has a good fit, probably playing with Besser, and he is going to have the chemistry still with Pearson from his time when he was with LA. However, I think it's just I'm nervous of what the grand scheme of things is going to look like in the long run. Yeah. So I don't know. I do like the trade. It's going to help him in the playoffs. I don't know if they're a contending team because of it, but I'm just nervous for the future.
Yeah, you know what? I certainly see that concern. Let's talk a little bit about the player we got, though, in Tyler Toffoli, because Tyler Toffoli is actually a pretty decent player.
Well, he's the top scoring for LA right now, goal scorer.
Yeah, and I mean, this is also a player that won 2 cups, right? He was a pivotal role in both of them. You know, he was part of the Tanner Pearson line when he did win one of those cups. And you know what? There's something to be said about a guy that comes in that really kind of helps galvanize the squad around like this compete level you need in the playoffs. And I know you don't really see the Canucks as a playoff team in terms of like actually winning a round, but
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I feel like they could win one round. When it gets to the second round, that's when it starts to get interesting. I don't necessarily see them winning a second round. I mean, as much as I would love to, don't get me wrong, I would love to see the Canucks win another round. I just don't see it with the teams that they'll be going up against. Like a team like St. Louis. Well, I mean, Tyler Toffoli, he's going to bring some firepower, no question about it. Mm-hmm. It's just I don't know if they can compete with the other bigger teams.
Yeah, I really like Tyler Toffoli's compete level, and I think that's just part of one of those traits that really makes a Vancouver Canuck. And when I think of Tyler Toffoli, I do see the fit, right? I see we need a shooter. And mind you, Besser's injured for 3 weeks, right? He's got some kind of a rib issue, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, that's significant. And you're getting a guy that knows how to find those scoring areas, and he has that scoring touch. And you could say part of Besser's issue is he wasn't finding the puck in scoring areas and really filling the net with whatever passes were brought to him.
Right. No, I get it. I mean, on the grand scheme of things, it is a really nice trade for the time being. Like, Tyler Toffoli fits perfectly with them right now.
Yeah, and it's just tough because the Canucks just have to live with whatever Tyler Madden turns out to be, because he still projects as a top 6 forward in the NHL.
Absolutely.
It's just the Canucks might have saw something that made them question that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So we have to trust the Canucks scouting department, because obviously they had a part in this decision.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. But let's move on now. Let's talk about this past trade that happened a few days ago, or earlier this week, which was Jason Zucker heading to Pittsburgh from the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, you know what? Great fit. I'll start by saying Zucker's on a 4-year deal, right? $5.5 million. And that's significant, because what's going to become a theme in this trade deadline is guys with term are going to get significant assets back. Because right now the asking price for just a sheer rental is a first and a prospect, and maybe even an NHL player.
Right.
So a guy with term, that's going to fetch that or more, right? Every time, because when you think about it, that team can just take a guy with term and sell him the next year when he's a UFA for what they just paid for him, if you were to say all spades are a spade, right? But let's call it what it is. Guys with term are worth more.
Absolutely. And with Jason Zucker, he's such a nice fit playing with Crosby. Jake Gensel is injured. Nick Bjugstad is injured. Those are both key pieces to this team. So with having Jason Zucker playing with Crosby, it's just going to help him so much more because he is such a skilled player. However, when I saw this trade, The first round pick let's break down the trade real quick. So Jason Zucker went to Pittsburgh in exchange for Alex Galchenyuk, a first round pick, and Kalen Addison, a prospect. So when I first saw the trade, I thought they overpaid. However, you're talking about term. That definitely had a factor in it. It's just Kalen Addison, I don't know if you remember, but he was kind of the quarterback on the power play for the World Juniors for the Canadian team. So he was a great player. And that's what his specialty is, the power play. He's going to be a legit player, in my opinion, when he does come to the league. So that was kind of the overpayment. But with the fit that it did bring to Pittsburgh, playing with guys like Crosby, being on the power play, the guy's such a skilled player as it is. So it's obviously made sense. Because when you have Crosby and Malkin, you're always going to be contending.
Yeah, and Jason Zucker, he's really good in certain areas that get out quickly. Like, his acceleration is unreal, and I think he's 28 or around there anyway, right?
Yeah.
So 27, 28, whatever it is, he will fulfill that contract he has in terms of top 6 potential. But yeah, you know what? I really think that his game, right, built around speed, just works well with Crosby, works well with Malkin, whoever they want to pair him with. I think his game works. And we've seen in the past sometimes there's actually been guys that have gone to Pittsburgh and haven't really played well. One of which is David Perron. And you never think of David Perron as a guy that maybe couldn't play with Crosby, couldn't play with Malkin, but he just doesn't have that same speed. Like, his game is about puck possession. And you know what? That's not really Crosby and Malkin's game. Their game is, drive the play with speed and get the puck to them in spots where they can score and create space for one another, both off the rush and like entering the zone and all that. So, yeah, you know what? I just think it's a great trade, and the 4 years, having 4 years of a top 6 forward is something you can't really blink at,
Well, $5.5 million per. The price is only going to go up for players like that, right? So it's a perfect fit.
And it doesn't surprise me. Guys like this with term are fetching way more of an asking price. Is because if you don't get a guy like this for term, what you got to do is you got to go to the free agency. You got to sign a guy. He's 29 years old. Maybe not exactly who you want. Maybe not as fast as a guy you'd want. And then you'd have to pay him $6 or $7 million over 6 years. And that's just not something every team wants to do, because all of a sudden that same player, if you're trying to get him off your books, well, that's going to cost you a first. So why not just give up the first now to get a guy with the perfect term that he's going to fulfill that contract? And yeah, I'm not too surprised. This is where the NHL's going, and it's going to continue to.
Absolutely. So with that being said, let's move on. I know you really want to talk about the Buffalo Sabres right now, especially with the trade deadline coming up. They're a very interesting team. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Buffalo is an interesting team for sure. They have a general manager, Jason Botterill. He came in, I think, 2 years ago, whatever it was, from New York, a team that had years of success in the postseason. He almost promised to bring that same success to Buffalo. And Buffalo's been infamous for starting the season really strong and then trailing off. I think they've done that 3 seasons now. And enough is enough, apparently, for some Buffalo Sabres fans. We'll play a little bit of the clip, but, Buffalo's been rebuilding for what has to be about 8-10 years, right?
No, it feels like forever. They have such a, I don't even know, it's like an awkward team. They got Jimmy Vesey from the Rangers last year, and it's just that kind of fell off. Like, their bright spot right now, other than Jack Eichel, is Victor Olofsson. So I don't know, and I don't know. It just seems like such a toxic environment with Buffalo. Like, we all know the story about Ryan O'Reilly getting traded. He lost his love for hockey playing there. I don't know what it is about Buffalo, but there just seems that I don't know. It's just something toxic over there.
Yeah, and one thing that eventually people are going to start looking at, a lot of people are defending Jack Eichel. He's a star in his own right. And he is the face of that franchise. He's the only one scoring right now, what it seems like. But I guess he just might have to look at himself in terms of how he acts as a captain, how he helps galvanize his group. And Yeah, I mean, change has to come from within. It also has to come from management, though. And I'll get into management. But I think we'll start by just playing that clip of that fan. Yeah, Dirty Danglers, just take a listen.
Dwayne is going to lead us off this segment. Hi, Dwayne. Thanks for calling. You're on the air.
Hey, thanks, Bulldog. Thanks, guys. If you just give me a few, like a minute here, just to, like, I'll try and organize my thoughts as best I can. I'm just, I've the 24 years they've been in that arena. I think in some form of capacity, I've been a season ticket holder for about 15 of those years. I started, my first hockey card was Brad May. My first jersey was Pat LaFontaine. I idolized Dominik Hasek. I played goalie because of Dominik Hasek. I work for Hasek's Foundation now as a coach, and my life in hockey has been started because of Sabres hockey. I went to the finals games as a kid with my dad. I watched Jeff Sanderson score with one arm around Ed Belfour. I have so many great moments to talk about with this hockey team, and I'm surprised the organization remembered to wish Dominik Hasek a happy birthday today. I'll put it that way. It's so mind-boggling how we've fallen this far. And, I was cautiously optimistic coming into the season because I wasn't fully expecting playoffs, but I was happy with the way the season started because the competitiveness was there. Last year was misery 100% after the 10-game streak. It was absolute misery because the passion was not there. And it's been there. And then they go out and lay an egg last night in front of me. I was at the game. The first time I went to a game with my sister, by the way, and she had to sit there through that. And it's mind-blowing. I don't need a Jerry Jones type of owner. I need an owner who's going to answer to the fans when they misspell names on jerseys and have Chinese knockoffs on alumni. What is going on? What are we doing? I don't understand it, man. Bulldog, you lived through this. You've seen it. Have you ever been, have they ever sucked the passion out of you like they have me? I've dedicated my life to hockey because of this team. I can't do it anymore, man. I'm seriously, for the first time, considering just not being a season ticket holder this year. Even when the team was terrible, Ted Black would come on the station and talk to fans and address concerns. I don't need I don't need a damn camera in front of Terry Pagula every single day, but address our concerns. Be there when you screw up. Answer for the mistakes. Be accountable. Pat LaFontaine being forced out of the organization, 5 years ago, however long it was. I don't need an explanation, but it's just been mediocrity. It's almost worse than the Bills drought. And you know what? As I don't know what people's opinions of the man were, with Russ Brandon, but if Russ Brandon was running the team still, I highly doubt he would have allowed Chinese knockoff jerseys to be worn by Danny Garrett at Turkey Drive. I would have died on the ice. The goat head, missing deadlines. What the hell is going on? What is it? I didn't need playoffs this year. I wanted it, but I didn't need it. But when you screw up for the fans as much as this team has over the last, 5 years, and just don't hold yourself accountable, go hide at your house in Florida. What is this? Get in front of the camera and at least make us feel that we matter. That we matter to you. I'm sick of it, Bulldog. I'm sick of it. I'm sorry. I'll hang up and listen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so obviously some people in Buffalo aren't too happy, and rightfully so. I mean, Jason Botterill has come in, and he's been a middling GM in terms of what he's done, and I'm going to back this up. He goes after Colin Miller, that played for Vegas Golden Knights, because they needed defense at the time, right? So they go and get him for a second-round pick, which everybody thought, oh, wow, they didn't have to give up much at all, right? But it seemed like they're just getting value. They're not getting a fit with that value. And if they're getting that piece, they're not letting go of another piece on defense to make room for that Colin Miller. And because earlier they also traded to get Brandon Montour at the deadline before that. And they gave up a first-round pick for Montour, right? Mind you, Montour did have some term on him, so there's obviously value there. But, if you're trading for these D-men, you have to trade for a fit. You can't just be like me in GM mode and just get on, like you didn't win a Stanley Cup with the Vancouver Canucks and you sign with Ottawa and you just want to fill in all these top 4 D and just see what happens. I mean, this is the NHL. You have to tailor fit guys that can play with certain guys. And you got a guy like Darling coming in. What, do you just want some 26-year-old guy that just all he knows is playing on the second unit on the power play in Vegas and sometimes the first? And yeah, let's make him play for Buffalo and see how it goes. No, you need a guy that really teaches these young guys how to play defense.
Don't you think, honestly, I agree that, I mean, with how the things have been going, yeah, guys, like you're saying, with term are fetching more. Could it be like, I guess they were thinking the fit with Brandon Montour, for example, was that he was a right-hand shot. They didn't exactly have one of those. Yeah, they got Colin Miller, which he is a right-hand shot, right? So, yeah, I think they're trying to look for those combinations, but couldn't that be the fit that they were looking for in the first place?
Well, yes, but I believe they also have other players that fulfill different type of, and that's the issue right now is they obviously had to let Zach Bogosian go on waivers.
Yeah, I'm surprised nobody claimed him.
And the thing is maybe he's not a top 4 D anymore, but that's in part due to maybe the pressure put on him to perform offensively, even though his game is more just a good two-way game, play the body physical. Like, he'd be a perfect 6th defenseman. Like, the fact that he went on waivers is also kind of showing me that Buffalo Sabres thought, like, we love him as our 6th defenseman, but we want his contract off the books, so let's let him go. But you could definitely trade a guy without putting him on waivers. And, like, if he's truly doesn't deserve that position, like, sure, put him on waivers, but I'm pretty sure that Zach Bogosian's NHL player, and just a year ago, people were talking about him and Buffalo as one of the best defenses in the league. And he was one of the key pieces on that. And then they go out and trade Montour. They get all these other guys, and then they're just all clustered up on D. And, yeah, it's again, this toxic environment.
Well, the thing with Bogosian, he's a playoff guy. The size of him is just, let alone his play is just, he's a playoff performer. In my opinion, how I see him, he's a rich man's Eric Goodbranson, right? Yep. So he's just a physical player that when it comes playoff time, he's rearing to go. So like I said, it's surprising, like a guy like him, his caliber. I mean, not to say his caliber is like elite, but that kind of a player, I don't know, I don't really understand what's going on right now.
Yeah, and honestly, if it were me and I was Jason Botterill, I would be like, okay, if I really want to let go of him and his cap hit, like, I'm pretty sure his contract's expiring, right?
Yeah, it's last year's deal.
Yeah, so, I mean, try to trade him just so that you kind of do good to him. And then, like, if you can't find a trade partner, just put him on waivers right at the deadline, and then the teams that weren't able to get that extra defenseman, they can go pick him up. And, I mean, Buffalo is just a train wreck.
Absolutely. There's just not a team like them right now in terms of the toxicity surrounding the team.
Yeah, and they're so worried about defense last year, and it's like, you need a guy to play with Rasmus Dahlin, right? So why not just tailor fit, find that guy that can play with Rasmus Dahlin, totally plays that defensive game that kind of helps him, that kind of helps nurture him into being that Norris defenseman they hope to get out of him. And, they could have, traded that first-round pick to get maybe a good forward. Instead they're going for Jimmy Vesey. They're going for,
these third, second line guys, potential second line guys, right? It's just no fit.
It's just very little risk by Botterill, but, minimal reward, I guess.
Well, let me ask you this then. Do you think that the Buffalo Sabres will trade somebody like Rasmus Ristolainen, one of their top defensemen, young defenseman? He wanted out. I haven't heard anything from that yet. Do you think that he will want out now.
I mean, their coach is really good, and in terms of just being a player's coach, and the players really like him, and that was part of the I think that was part of the issue too in Buffalo, where it's like just toxic environment. Nobody liked the coach. And this year, Ristolainen said that was the best coach he's ever had. So he doesn't necessarily want out anymore, but I'm sure he'd be open to a change.
Well, does this mean, like, should they just do a complete teardown? Because that's what it kind of seems like they should. They have no goalie. Carter Hutton, great first half of the season, or the first few months of the season, I should say, then completely tailed off. They have Linus Ullmark down in the minors now. He's kind of nowhere to be seen, I believe. And, so I just don't know what they should do. Like, I feel like it should be a complete teardown, actually, in my opinion.
I mean, it's also kind of makes you think, how well do they scout, right? Because if we look at teams that are maybe comparable to the Buffalo Sabres and the time that they started rebuilding and whatnot, I mean, the Vancouver Canucks are up there, right? Mm-hmm. And they've scouted real well. They have players, Adam Gaudette, they got Demko in there. Obviously Pettersson. Mind you, like Buffalo, they have Olofsson, they have Eichel, but they haven't found enough talent to really overtake some of these third, fourth, second line roles, and that's really hurt them.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? Let's stop talking about Buffalo. It's kind of depressing. So let's talk about Carolina, because Carolina, again, it's a very interesting team. They have so much that, like, they're good, but they could be better. They have some injuries, so they can make some moves. They have pieces to move, so they can be a really big player in this trade deadline this year.
Yeah, I really like Carolina, and Pierre LeBrun actually reported that Canes have been interested in acquiring San Jose's defenseman Brendan Dillon. And obviously, Carolina had Dougie Hamilton go down to injury. Mind you, they have a great defense, one of the best defensive minded teams in the league in terms of playing team defense. So I think that would be a good add for Carolina. But pretty much any player that just plays a real good playoff-style game would be a good fit in Carolina, because they're a team that plays all four lines.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
All two or three D pairings.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we were talking earlier before. We're talking about J.G. Pajot from Ottawa, right? Mm-hmm. That could be a nice piece for a team like Carolina. But wouldn't it be a little bit sweeter if, say, Pajot went to Carolina, that the pick that Toronto, or the pick that Carolina got from Toronto in the Patrick Marleau trade, the first round pick, ended up going to Ottawa in return, plus some added players. But having that pick returned to Ottawa, wouldn't that just be a little bit of drama right there?
Absolutely. I would love that.
I think
I'm hoping it happens. And knowing Ottawa, they've made trades in the past where they've tried to get the best player in the trade, right? Like they gave up Mark Stone, but they made sure they got Brandstrom. Right? People always said, "Oh, you didn't get enough for Stone." Well, they got one of the top prospects. Usually teams just are able to give up a plethora of non-blue chip prospects. So in this case, if you're able to maybe get a top 15 NHL draft pick, a lot of teams would take that over, say, a late first, a Midland prospect and an NHL player.
Well, absolutely. And Toronto's not even a shoe-in to make the playoffs this year, which is kind of startling it's kind of blows your mind a little bit. But because they're, as of right now, the TSN trade bait right now, it shows that Carolina's first round pick is in play, but nobody's really taking into consideration the pick that they got from Toronto. So that could be intriguing as well. But do you think that they need something on defense, even with Dougie Hamilton coming back? I know you mentioned Brendan Dillon, but is there another piece, maybe an Alex Martinez or Martinez rather from LA, because they're looking to unload some players? There could be a lot of these stay-at-home defensemen that they could really like to have.
Well, they also need because Carolina is very known to have that good offensive D-man that has good breakout passes, or maybe even just a good 2-way D that has good stick, right? Mm-hmm. But I think much like some teams just need that guy that kind of plays a physical game up front to galvanize them. I feel like Carolina might need that physical D-man to kind of galvanize them, where it's like, yeah, we're not going to let anybody get in front of our crease. You know, we got Brendan Dillon here to clear the net. And I very much think that the Canes are in on that. And they're also in on anybody they think they can re-sign. And that's why I thought that Pajot was a very much in play for Carolina, because, you know, Pajot is not very proven. They could definitely trade for him and then offer him maybe that 6-7 year deal at $6 million that maybe a lot of other teams won't offer, and with no state tax.
Well, that's just it. Like I was about to say, like, yeah, that to you guys that may not seem like a lot considering the year that Pajot is having with, like, especially with Ottawa, but it's that no state tax that really intrigues players, right? Like, with the money that they're getting, that's the money that they actually get. So it is more intriguing, especially for Pajot. And like you said, Carolina has the assets to give up. So they could be a really scary team in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you talk about and if you talk about players that play like Pajot, like strong defensive game, Pajot's a plus player on a bad Ottawa team. Right, you look at their coach, Rod Brendamore. What did he play? He played center. Mm-hmm. He was like a Selke nominee, I believe. Right, so that's a guy that would really like to have a Pajot that's just a workhorse.
Absolutely. You finished talking about Carolina?
Yeah, and another reason I thought they'd go for Pajot is because apparently Eric Halla is very unhappy there. Right. He was traded in a Vegas deal to Carolina. Mm-hmm. So expect him to go at the deadline for sure. And Kane's first-round pick is actually 10th on the TSN trade bait board. So that is another reason we think that Carolina's vying for somebody. And if there would be anybody that I think they'd want to have, it would be Pajot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like I said, they have the assets, and it would be a scary piece to have, especially if you have to play against Carolina in the playoffs, that's for sure. All right, but let's move on to Montreal real quick. Let's have just a few words on them.
Yeah, so basically just to recap, obviously Ilya Kovalchuk didn't go too well in LA, so he signs a 1-year deal, $700K in Montreal, the league minimum, and he's doing really well right now. And now Montreal's trying to flip that for assets, as they might not be a legit playoff contender or even make the playoffs.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Like Thomas Tatar's name, he's coming up. I just don't see that happening, because next year, if they're not a playoff team this year, in my opinion, they will be next year. I feel like Bergevin has kind of grew, because there was a lot of backlash against him a few years ago. He's kind of grew out of that, and he's become more smarter as a GM. So I don't really necessarily see Thomas Tatar getting out of or leaving Montreal. There's 2 years left on his contract. He's a good player. So I don't really necessarily see that. But yeah, Kovalchuk's fit. If honestly, what I was going to say was I felt like Kovalchuk may have actually went to the Canucks if they didn't get to get Toffoli. That could have been a really interesting piece to play with Bo Horvat. But yeah, like teams like Calgary, Boston, or even the Oilers, I'm reluctant to say, could be a player for a guy like Kovalchuk with that sniping ability that he has.
I personally think that the Oilers would be the front runner for Kovalchuk. And that's just because they're the type of team that they have a spot for him for one, you know, and Kovalchuk is one of those guys that he needs a top 6 spot to really produce. He needs to get his feels in. He needs to get his shifts in. And in Edmonton, I think he can do that. And that all of a sudden gives some competition to a guy like James Neal.
But right. Here's what I'm saying. Here's my thought on that, though. Is he fast enough to play on those top 2 lines in Edmonton?
No, I don't think he's fast enough, but I think he can play with Nugent Hopkins, and he can definitely finish. So I would definitely see them looking into it. And also, it's just that like any true contender doesn't really want Kovalchuk. They want the next best player. Kovalchuk's everybody's plan B.
Right.
So Edmonton I see as a team that doesn't really have the assets to get that top-end player, but they might have enough to get Kovalchuk. So that's my thought process there. Obviously fit, I mean, you want a guy with speed, maybe you go for that Grant from Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
He scored, I think, a couple goals against the Canucks the other day.
Yeah.
And he's looking good. He's on the trade bait board.
Yeah, so. He is. Yeah. That's Anaheim's a really weird team, but we'll get into that a little later. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to add? All right. Well, with that being said, I think that covers this episode of the Dirty Dangles podcast. We really like to thank you guys for listening, tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at dirtydangleshp. Also, follow us on or subscribe to us on YouTube and drop us a like and share some comments with us. We'd love to hear from you guys. But until next time, Dirty
Dangles.